celebration of the Bristol Kwanzaa Karamu here at the Marcus Garvey Centre, and I'm here with the guest speaker at this Karamu, Sister Ekua Esther Stanford. If you want to just highlight for the family what your message was about.
I was really trying to speak to the theme, which was winning the lottery of life, leaving a legacy for our children. But I was pointing out, first of all, that actually life isn't a lottery, and that we are at this time, as African peoples, engaged in one of the most serious struggles for our life here on planet Earth. So I thought it was important to set that context for Kwanzaa this year, because although I was speaking, largely about the need for us to build the institution of the National African People's Parliament, I felt it was important for people to understand where we are at in history, in our history, our story, and also what is our collective purpose and mission whilst we are on our assignment. Because as African people, we're born for we know that we are born for a special purpose. And unfortunately, many of us have been dislocated and alienated from our own histories and cultures. So we just feel that life is haphazard and it is a lottery. Actually, no, where we're at, we have to be on purpose. We cannot afford to take chances. Yes, we might take risks, but very calculated risks. So I was speaking about that and looking at the whole notion of sovereignty. Pan-African sovereignty, which is a concept which speaks to the supremacy of our own creator, our own spirituality, our own humanity here on planet Earth. And unfortunately, as a result of our history of enslavement and colonization, our sovereignty was actually denied to us, even though we never abandoned our sovereignty, and all of our efforts up until this point have been trying to restore, trying to reclaim Africa, trying to reunite not only the continent. People see Pan-Africanism as being very much about just the continent, but actually it was about reuniting the dismembered body of Africa, which is her people, and then that being tied to a wider mission of transforming not only our own realities individually and in our communities, but of Earth. Because where we used to be, we were governing ourselves in the globe. We were men and women of big affairs. We were not subjugated and subject to the sovereignty and the terrain and the misrule of others. And that's the status that we have legally. We are still subjugated. And so it's important for us on the road to physical sovereignty and reclaiming lands and assets and resources. But it's important for us to adopt a sovereignty consciousness, because it starts in the mind. Everything starts in the mind. And I was also talking about the concept of how you start a country, how you start a nation. I'm really trying to encourage people to think big, to be visionary about nation building, not to confine ourselves to our understanding of the British nation or even African nations as they exist, and in particular, really challenging those who are working with our young, those who are educators, those who are parents, to try and inculcate some of these ideas in their children. Not only the children that are here, but in particular the children that are yet to come, who will help us with this mission. Because Europeans, the Caucasians, this is what they teach their children. From a very young age, their children are taught that they are going to rule. And that's why even, if you go by their notion of class, and they talk about the white working class, even the white working class will consider themselves to be superior to us. Doesn't matter, who we are, because they are born with that sense of they have a special place in the world and that they are automatically superior. So I'm not saying that we need to make our children feel superior. It's not about a superiority complex. It's about us being who we are, because we are the first. We don't need to impose our superiority on anybody. We just need to reclaim who we are. And I spoke about being African and being African, not just about, wearing the names or reclaiming the names and engaging in the cultural festivities and the clothes and what have you, you that being African is actually a responsibility as well as an identity, and it is a destiny. We have yet to become African, and so we have to continually strive to strive for higher stages of freedom. See, when we was in chattel slavery, freedom was conceptualized as just removing the physical chains. And, colonization, freedom was conceptualized as, reclaiming the territory. So now we're in that generation where we're going back to the original idea about going back to our own sovereignty, not recognizing their borders. And so we know that independence hasn't really brought about true freedom. So we recognize that each generation has to continually evolve the struggle for freedom. And in that, we create new spaces. We create higher conceptual realities, which we actually manifest. And that only then can we actually get back to where we were.
Okay. Right, and just to go back on something, you mentioned that you brought up about the National African People's Parliament. Now, we do understand that you're a leading light and one of the co-chairs of this interim institution. Would you then say that the formation of this National African People's Parliament is in part a way of us claiming back some of that sovereignty?
Yes, it is, and it has to be. We have to also generate this understanding and bring about this reality in practice. That is the vision, certainly from my perspective and many other people who are involved in leadership. But we also have to make it the people's vision. We have to encourage our people to remember and make them recognize how important this parliament is at this juncture. Because if not now, when? If not us, who? And those were the questions I was asking. I was really posing challenging questions to our brothers and sisters here at Kwanzaa in terms of them not abdicating their responsibility and their status in order to usher in this, next generation of young leaders that we are all nurturing at this time. Because we cannot leave the work that we, the elders, the adults, are supposed to do to our young. That would not be fair. They can lead us, but it would be where will they lead us? And so, we have to work with them in order to guide them so that we can harness that natural genius that they have, that a lot of the time is being misguided at this time. And sometimes they themselves misguide their own energy and their creativity and their genius. We have to be mature enough, be courageous enough to help support them to channel those energies into building our nation, so that they have that as part of their conceptualization of freedom. So that even if it is not realized in terms of the liberation of Africa within many people's who's in the room's lifetime, that it is something that our children will have and they will pass on to their children. And that is what we have to do. And so that is part of the sovereignty consciousness. And we know that spiritually, it manifests first as a thought, and then we speak it into being, and then it becomes reality. So I was really trying to get people to recognize that's how we create. A lot of the time people see the end product, but they don't see the beginnings. They don't see the ordinary, mundane work and organizing that has to be done in order to get us to our end destination, wherever we say that is.
Okay, well, as we can hear the drum corps calling the house back to order, as is within our tradition, we want to say to Tenda Madasepa, to you, keynote speaker at the Bristol Kwanzaa Karamu, here on the 28th of December, Sister Ekua, to Tenda.
To Tenda to you all.